The transport shuttle's engines hummed as it descended through the atmosphere of Kepler Station. Maya Chen pressed her face against the small window, watching the massive space station grow larger. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different alien species docked at the metal arms that stretched out like a giant wheel. This was the Galactic Academy, the most prestigious school in known space. Maya adjusted the straps of her combat armor one more time. The black and silver plating covered her from neck to toe, with energy shields built into every joint. Her helmet rested in her lap, its visor reflecting the stars outside. She knew how she looked. She knew what the other students would think. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. Maya stood and walked toward the exit, her armored boots clanking against the metal floor. The other passengers, mostly wealthy alien diplomats and traders, gave her strange looks. A young Zephyrian with blue skin and tentacles for hair whispered something to his companion. They both laughed. The airlock opened with a hiss. Maya stepped onto the station and immediately felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. The docking bay was enormous, with a glass dome showing the swirling nebula beyond. Students from every corner of the galaxy walked through the space. Tall, graceful Ilari with their crystal-like skin, stocky Grimani with their stone-like hide, sleek Vorthan with their cat-like features. And there, walking among them in full battle armor, was one human girl. "Look at the primitive," someone said in Galactic Standard. Maya's translator picked it up instantly. "Humans always think they need weapons for everything." "I heard they come from a death world," another voice added. "Maybe she's afraid of clean air." Maya kept walking, her face calm behind her armor's faceplate. She had heard worse during her journey here. Much worse. The other species saw humans as violent barbarians who had only recently discovered space travel. They weren't entirely wrong, but they didn't understand why humans had developed that way. She found her assigned quarters on level 7. The room was small but clean, with a bed, desk, and storage unit. Maya set down her single bag and activated the room's privacy field. Only then did she begin removing her armor. Each piece came off with a soft click. The chest plate, the arm guards, the leg protection. Beneath the armor, Maya wore a simple black bodysuit. But as she moved, glimpses of something else became visible. Scars. Hundreds of them crisscrossing her skin like a roadmap of pain. There was a soft chime at her door. Maya quickly grabbed a standard academy uniform and pulled it on. The fabric felt strange after months in armor, too soft and vulnerable. She opened the door to find a tall Ilari student standing outside. His crystal skin sparkled in the corridor light. "I am Kethvar," he said in perfect Galactic Standard. "I have been assigned as your orientation guide." His tone was polite but cold. "I must inform you that weapons are not permitted in academy buildings." "I'm not carrying weapons," Maya replied quietly. Kethvar's crystalline features shifted in what might have been confusion. "Your armor appears to be military grade. The energy shields alone qualify as defensive weaponry under academy regulations." "It's not for fighting," Maya said. "It's for living." Before Kethvar could respond, Maya stepped past him into the corridor. She had 3 days before classes started. 3 days to prove that she belonged here, armor and all. The other students might laugh now, but they didn't know what humans had survived to reach the stars. They didn't know why a 17-year-old girl needed armor just to feel safe in her own skin. As they walked through the academy's gleaming halls, Maya caught more whispers and stares. Some students openly pointed at her. A group of Vorthan cadets made mock-charging gestures, pretending to attack invisible enemies. Maya ignored them all. She had learned long ago that showing weakness only made things worse. "The Academy has students from 47 different species," Kethvar explained as they walked. "Humans are the newest members of the Galactic Council, having achieved space travel only 200 years ago. Most species here have been exploring the stars for millennia." "I know," Maya said. "The coursework is designed to challenge the best minds in the galaxy. Many students find it overwhelming." Maya stopped walking and looked at him. Even through the academy uniform, she could feel the phantom weight of her armor. "Do you think I can't handle it?" Kethvar's crystal skin flickered with what Maya's studies had taught her was embarrassment. "I merely meant that adjustment can be difficult. Perhaps if you explained why you feel the need for protective gear in an academic environment." Maya was quiet for a long moment. Through the academy's massive windows, she could see Earth's sun, just a distant point of light among thousands of others. Home felt impossibly far away. "Where I come from," she finally said, Armor isn't just about protection from enemies. Sometimes it's about protection from yourself, from memories, from things that happened when you were too small to fight back. Kethvar said nothing, but Maya noticed his skin had stopped flickering. They continued walking in silence, past classrooms where alien students debated quantum mechanics and stellar engineering, past laboratories where future diplomats learned to navigate the complex web of galactic politics. Maya had fought for 3 years just to get here. She had scored higher on the academy entrance exams than 90% of applicants. She spoke 7 alien languages fluently. She had studied every major galactic civilization and could recite their histories from memory. But none of that mattered if she couldn't prove she belonged. As they reached the academy's central plaza, a crowd of students had gathered around something. Maya could hear laughter and excited chatter. Kethvar led her closer, and Maya saw what had captured everyone's attention. A holographic display showed news feeds from across the galaxy. But the main screen was focused on Earth, showing footage that made Maya's blood run cold. The caption read, "Primitive human military exercises continue despite Galactic Council concerns." The video showed human soldiers in combat training. They moved through obstacle courses designed to simulate the worst possible conditions. Poison gas, extreme temperatures, weapons fire. The soldiers never stopped, never gave up even when they were obviously injured. Barbaric, someone in the crowd said. They train their children to be killers. I heard they actually fight wars on their own planet, another voice added. Against their own species. Maya watched the screen and felt something cold settle in her stomach. The footage was real. Those were human soldiers and they were training for war. But the aliens watching didn't understand what they were seeing. They didn't know that those soldiers were training to protect something precious, something worth dying for. Someone in the crowd noticed Maya standing there. "Hey, you're the human with the armor," a Grimani student called out. "Is this how all your people live? In constant fear of violence?" The crowd turned to look at her. Dozens of alien faces all waiting for her answer. Maya felt the weight of their judgment, the assumption that humans were nothing more than violent primitives who had stumbled into space by accident. She thought about her armor, safely locked away in her quarters. She thought about the scars hidden beneath her uniform. She thought about the long journey that had brought her here, and all the reasons she could never go back. "No," Maya said quietly. "We don't live in fear. We live despite it." The next morning brought Maya's first real challenge. She stood outside Professor Veltar's advanced xenobiology classroom, wearing her academy uniform and feeling naked without her armor. Her skin crawled with phantom sensations, memories of pain that had nothing to do with the present moment. Inside the classroom, students from a dozen species sat in arranged groups. Maya noticed immediately that they had segregated themselves by species. The Alari clustered together near the front, their crystal skin catching the light. The Vorthon occupied the middle rows, their cat-like ears twitching as they whispered among themselves. The Grimani sat heavily in reinforced chairs at the back, and there, in the very last row, was a single empty seat. Maya walked toward it, feeling every eye in the room track her movement. She sat down carefully, hyper-aware of how the other students leaned away from her. The whisper started immediately. "Did you hear about yesterday?" a Vorthon student said, not bothering to lower her voice. She actually defended those barbaric military exercises. "My father says humans are genetically predisposed to violence," an Alari added. "Something about their evolution on a death world. I heard they still have wars on their home planet," the Vorthon continued. "Actual wars with killing and everything. How did the council even accept them?" Maya kept her eyes forward, but her hands clenched into fists under the desk. She had heard these conversations before, but they never got easier. The other species had grown up in peaceful civilizations, many of them post-scarcity societies where conflict was resolved through careful diplomacy. They couldn't understand a species that had clawed its way to the stars through centuries of struggle. Professor Veltar entered the room, her forearms carrying multiple data tablets. She was Kethani, one of the oldest spacefaring species, with skin that shifted between different shades of blue depending on her mood. Right now it was a calm turquoise. "Today we will discuss adaptation and survival across different planetary environments," she announced. "I want each species group to present on how their evolution shaped their current capabilities." Maya's stomach dropped. Species groups. Of course. The Ilari will discuss crystalline adaptation to high radiation environments. The Vorthan will cover predator evolution and enhanced sensory capabilities. The Grimani will examine mineral absorption and extreme durability. Professor Veltar's eyes found Maya in the back row. Miss Chen, as our only human representative, you will present on human adaptability. The classroom fell silent. Maya could feel every student staring at her, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed disdain. She stood slowly, her legs feeling unsteady. I need some time to prepare, Maya said. Of course. Presentations begin tomorrow. Class dismissed. As the other students filed out, Maya remained seated. Her hands were shaking now, and she pressed them flat against the desk to make it stop. Human adaptability. How could she explain what humans had adapted to survive? How could she make them understand without revealing too much? Miss Chen? Professor Veltar approached her desk. Up close, Maya could see that the professor's skin had shifted to a concerned purple. Is everything all right? I'm fine, Maya said automatically. Professor Veltar studied her with 4 remarkably intelligent eyes. You know, in my 300 years of teaching, I have learned that students who say they are fine are usually anything but. Would you like to discuss your presentation? Maya looked up at her. What do you know about human evolution? The basics. Your species evolved on a planet with extreme environmental variations, frequent natural disasters, and significant predation pressure. This led to enhanced problem-solving abilities, physical endurance, and what your scientists call persistence hunting capabilities. That's the textbook version, Maya said quietly. And the real version? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Through the classroom windows, she could see other students walking across the academy plaza, laughing and socializing in groups. Normal students from normal worlds leading normal lives. Humans adapt to survive trauma, she said finally. Not just physical threats, psychological ones. We develop coping mechanisms that other species might consider unusual. Professor Veltar's skin shifted to a thoughtful yellow-green. Such as? Maya gestured vaguely at herself. Some humans use physical barriers to feel safe. Armor, for instance. Others develop hypervigilance, constantly scanning for threats. Some shut down emotionally to protect themselves from further harm. We call it adaptation, but other species might call it damage. And you believe this makes humans weak? No, Maya said, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. I think it makes us strong in ways that other species can't understand. But explaining that in a classroom presentation, she trailed off. Professor Veltar was quiet for a moment. You know, Miss Chen, the most important lessons are often the most difficult to teach. Perhaps your classmates need to learn something they cannot find in textbooks. That evening, Maya sat in her quarters staring at her armor. The black and silver plating reflected the soft light from her desk lamp. She had been wearing some form of protective gear for 8 years now, ever since the incident that had left her covered in scars. The armor wasn't just protection from external threats. It was a barrier between her damaged body and a world that might judge her for surviving. She thought about her presentation tomorrow. She could give them the sanitized version, talk about human endurance and problem-solving. She could mention persistence hunting and tool use. She could keep it academic and safe, or she could tell them the truth. Maya activated her personal communication device and sent a message to Earth. The quantum relay would take several minutes to reach home, but she needed to hear a familiar voice. The response came faster than expected. A holographic image of Dr. Sarah Martinez appeared in front of Maya's desk. She was Maya's therapist back on Earth, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair. Maya, Dr. Martinez said, smiling. How are you adjusting to academy life? I have to give a presentation tomorrow, Maya said without preamble. About human adaptation and survival. Dr. Martinez's expression grew more serious. And you're wondering whether to discuss your personal experiences. They think we're violent primitives, Maya said. They see the armor and assume I'm afraid of everything. But they don't understand that sometimes the biggest threat isn't external. What do you think they need to understand? Maya was quiet for a moment. That surviving trauma isn't weakness. That adaptation isn't always pretty. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit you need protection. And are you ready to be that vulnerable with them? Maya looked at her armor again. 8 years ago, she had been a different person. Before the attack that had left her scarred and terrified. before she had learned that predators could look like trusted authority figures, before she had discovered that sometimes the people meant to protect you were the ones you needed protection from. I don't know, she admitted, but maybe it's time they learned what humans are really capable of surviving. Dr. Martinez nodded slowly. Remember, Maya, you control how much you share. You don't owe them your pain, but if you choose to share it, it might help them understand something important about resilience. After the call ended, Maya sat in the dark for a long time. Tomorrow she would stand in front of her classmates and try to explain what it meant to be human. She would try to make them understand that armor wasn't always about physical protection, and that sometimes the greatest act of courage was simply showing up. She thought about the presentation she would give. Not the sanitized textbook version, but something real, something that might help her classmates see past their prejudices and understand what humans had really adapted to survive. Maya reached for her data tablet and began to write. She had a story to tell, and for the first time since arriving at the academy, she wasn't going to hide behind safe academic language. Tomorrow her classmates would learn what human adaptability really meant. They would learn why a 17-year-old girl needed armor to feel safe in her own skin, and maybe, just maybe, they would stop laughing. Maya stood outside the classroom door, her presentation tablet clutched in sweating hands. She had barely slept the night before, running through different versions of what she might say. The safe version, the honest version, something in between. Through the small window in the door, she could see her classmates already presenting. Zarakin, an Ilari student, was showing holographic models of crystal formations, explaining how her people's silicon-based biology allowed them to absorb harmful radiation and convert it to energy. The other students watched with polite interest, taking notes on their tablets. Impressive adaptation, Professor Veltar commented as Zarakin finished. The Ilari response to their homeworld's stellar radiation is a perfect example of evolutionary specialization. Next came Thresh, a Grimani student whose stone-like hide could apparently withstand pressures that would crush most other species. He demonstrated by having a classroom robot apply crushing force to his arm, showing no sign of discomfort as the readings climbed to levels that would pulverize human bones. Remarkable, Professor Veltar said. The Grimani adaptation to high-gravity, high-pressure environments represents millions of years of specialized evolution. Then it was Maya's turn. She walked to the front of the classroom on unsteady legs. The other students watched her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed amusement. Someone in the back whispered something about Death World primitives and several students snickered. Maya activated her tablet, and the classroom's holographic projector came to life. Instead of showing evolutionary charts or biological models, the display showed a simple image: Earth as seen from space. Human adaptation, Maya began, her voice quieter than she had intended. She cleared her throat and tried again. Human adaptation isn't like other species. We didn't evolve specialized biology to handle specific environmental threats. We evolved something else. The image changed to show various human environments: deserts, Arctic regions, dense jungles, mountain peaks. Humans can survive in almost any environment on our planet, not because we adapted biologically to each one, but because we learned to adapt psychologically to constant change. Kethivar, the Ilari who had been her orientation guide, raised his hand. But surely physical adaptation is more efficient. Why develop behavioral responses when biological ones would be superior? Maya looked at him for a moment, then changed the image again. This time it showed human children playing in what looked like a war zone. Rubble and damaged buildings surrounded a makeshift playground where kids laughed and ran around obstacles that had once been homes. Because humans don't just adapt to environmental threats, Maya said. We adapt to survive trauma. The classroom grew very quiet. Even the whispers stopped. This image was taken in my hometown 5 years ago, Maya continued. There was an attack by a terrorist group. 43 people died, including 17 children. The adults who survived could have rebuilt somewhere else, somewhere safer. Instead, they stayed and built that playground in the ruins. She changed the image again. Now it showed rescue workers pulling survivors from collapsed buildings. Humans have a saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Other species might consider this irrational. Why not simply avoid dangerous situations? But humans learned long ago that sometimes you can't avoid trauma. sometimes it finds you anyway. So we develop the ability to not just survive it, but to grow from it. Maya's hands were shaking now, but she pressed on. Human adaptation is psychological resilience. It's the ability to be broken and still function, to be damaged and still fight, to be afraid and still move forward. She looked around the classroom. Some students were staring at her with confusion. Others looked uncomfortable. A few appeared genuinely interested for the first time. I wear armor, Maya said simply. Not because I'm expecting a fight, but because I survived something that taught me the world isn't always safe. My armor isn't weakness, it's adaptation. It's how I learned to exist in a world that hurt me. The image changed one final time. It showed Maya herself, but not as she was now. This was Maya at 9 years old in a hospital bed covered in bandages. Her eyes in the photo held a 1,000-yard stare that no child should ever have. This is human adaptation, Maya said. We survive things that would break other species. Not because we're stronger, but because we learn to be functional while broken. We learn to find ways to feel safe in an unsafe universe. Professor Veltar's skin had shifted to deep purple, which Maya had learned indicated intense concentration. Miss Chen, can you elaborate on the mechanism of this adaptation? How do humans develop these psychological responses? Maya was quiet for a moment. This was the part she had dreaded, but also the part that felt most important. We call it post-traumatic growth. When humans experience severe trauma, especially as children, our brains reorganize themselves. We become hypervigilant, always scanning for threats. We develop coping mechanisms that help us function despite our fear. We learn to find strength in unexpected places. But surely this makes humans less capable of rational thought, asked a Vorthan student. Constant fear responses would interfere with logical decision-making. You would think so, Maya agreed. But it does the opposite. Humans who have survived trauma often become more capable, not less. We develop enhanced pattern recognition. We become better at reading danger signals. We learn to think creatively under pressure because we've had to. She gestured to the image of herself in the hospital. That little girl learned to be afraid of trusted authority figures because one hurt her. But she also learned to fight back. She learned to be suspicious of people who seemed too friendly. She learned to trust her instincts when something felt wrong. And eventually she learned to protect herself in ways that let her function in the world. The armor, Kethver said suddenly. Understanding dawned in his crystalline features. The armor, Maya confirmed. It's not about expecting external threats. It's about feeling safe enough in my own skin to interact with others. It's a psychological adaptation that lets me be present and functional, instead of constantly paralyzed by fear. The classroom was completely silent now. Maya could see the wheels turning in her classmates' minds as they reconsidered everything they thought they knew about human behavior. This is why humans seem violent to other species, Maya continued. Not because we enjoy conflict, but because we've learned that sometimes you have to fight to survive. We've learned that predators exist, that bad things happen to good people, and that sometimes the only choice is to fight back or be destroyed. She thought about the military footage her classmates had watched yesterday, the human soldiers training in impossible conditions. When you see humans training for war, you're not seeing a violent species. You're seeing a species that has learned that peace is precious because it can be taken away. We fight to protect peace, not because we love violence. Professor Veltar stepped forward. Miss Chen, this is fascinating. Are you suggesting that trauma actually enhances human capabilities in some ways? I'm suggesting that humans learn to transform damage into strength, Maya said. We learn to take the worst experiences and use them as fuel to become more resilient, more aware, more capable of protecting ourselves and others. Maya looked around the classroom one more time. That's human adaptation. Not biological specialization, but psychological transformation. We became a species that could be broken and still function, damaged and still fight, afraid and still brave. As she returned to her seat, Maya realized something had changed in the room. The whispers were different now. Instead of mockery, she heard confusion, curiosity, even respect. Her classmates were looking at her differently, seeing not a primitive in armor, but a survivor who had learned to thrive despite damage. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Maya felt like maybe she belonged here after all. Professor Veltar's skin had shifted to a warm golden color. Class, I believe we have learned something important today about adaptation and survival. Miss Chen has shown us that sometimes the most powerful evolutionary adaptations are not physical, but psychological. The ability to transform trauma into strength may be humanity's greatest survival trait. As the class ended and students filed out, several of them approached Maya, not to mock or question, but to understand. And for the first time in years, Maya felt ready to remove her armor and show them the scars underneath. 3 days after Maya's presentation, the Academy received an emergency alert. Maya was in her quarters, finally comfortable enough to study without her armor, when the station-wide communication system crackled to life. All students report to emergency stations immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Maya's blood went cold. Emergency procedures at the Academy were extensive, covering everything from system failures to hostile encounters. She had memorized every protocol during her first week, a habit born from years of preparing for the worst-case scenario. She was reaching for her armor when her door chimed. Maya opened it to find Kethvar standing outside, his crystal skin flickering between blue and red. A sign of extreme agitation in Alari. "Maya," he said, his usual formal tone replaced by urgency. "Have you seen the tactical displays?" "There's been an incident." Maya quickly pulled on her armor, the familiar weight settling around her like a second skin. "What kind of incident?" "Pirate attack. A convoy of civilian ships was ambushed near the Proxima relay. The Academy's rescue fleet responded, but..." Kethvar's skin flashed deep red. "They're requesting backup. Combat-trained personnel only." Maya's hand stilled on her armor clasps. "Combat-trained? The Academy has combat simulation programs, but no actual combat veterans among the student body," Kethvar explained quickly. Except humans," Maya finished. They made their way through corridors filled with confused and frightened students. Most alien species had evolved beyond the need for warfare centuries ago. The concept of actual combat was as foreign to them as breathing underwater would be to Maya. Their military training consisted of theoretical exercises and diplomatic protocols. In the Academy's command center, chaos reigned. Professor Veltar stood before a massive holographic display showing the battle zone. Dozens of ships moved through space, their positions marked by different colored icons. Red for pirates, blue for Academy rescue ships, and scattered among them, yellow for civilian vessels under attack. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly," Professor Veltar announced to the assembled faculty and senior students. "The pirates have superior firepower and are using the civilian ships as shields. Our rescue fleet is trained in defensive maneuvers only." "What about the Galactic Navy?" asked Commander Zethok, the Academy's military advisor. 6 hours away at minimum," replied Professor Veltar. "The civilians don't have 6 hours." Maya stepped forward, her armored footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet command center. "How many crew members are on the rescue ships?" Professor Veltar's skin shifted to surprised yellow. "Miss Chen? Why would you— How many?" Maya repeated firmly. 43 Academy graduates, all with advanced degrees in xenobiology, engineering, or diplomacy. Zero combat experience. Maya studied the tactical display. The pirates were using classic pack tactics, harrying the rescue ships while systematically disabling the civilian vessels. It was a strategy designed to maximize fear and confusion, while minimizing actual resistance. "They're not trying to destroy the ships," Maya observed. "They want prisoners and cargo intact. That gives us an advantage, us." Commander Zethok's reptilian features showed confusion. "Miss Chen, with respect, you are a first-year student." Maya looked around the command center. Every face showed the same expression. Well-meaning aliens who had lived their entire lives in peaceful societies, suddenly confronted with actual violence. They had theoretical knowledge, but no practical experience with the reality of combat. "I've been in situations like this before," Maya said quietly. The command center fell silent. Through the great windows, Maya could see other students gathered in viewing areas, watching the tactical display with horror and fascination. For most of them, this would be their first exposure to real violence. "Maya," Kethvar said softly, "what exactly happened to you on Earth?" Maya was quiet for a moment, watching the display as another civilian ship's icon shifted from yellow to red. "Captured. When I was 9, terrorists attacked my school. They took hostages. I was trapped in a classroom for 14 hours while my teachers tried to negotiate with people who had no intention of letting anyone go alive." Professor Veltar's skin had gone completely white. "How did you survive?" I learned that sometimes you can't wait for rescue. Sometimes you have to save yourself. Maya turned to face the assembled faculty. Those pirates aren't going to negotiate. They're predators, and they're counting on their prey being too civilized to fight back effectively. Commander Zethok stepped forward. Miss Chen, are you suggesting you could advise our rescue teams? I'm suggesting I could do more than advise. Maya pulled up her academy file on the nearest terminal. I have advanced certifications in zero-gravity combat, tactical planning, and emergency response. I've been training for scenarios like this since I was 10 years old. But you're 17, Professor Veltar protested. I've been 17 for 8 years, Maya replied, ever since the day I learned that the world isn't safe and no one was coming to save us. The tactical display updated again. The pirates had disabled 2 more civilian ships and were closing in on a third. Maya could see the rescue fleet maintaining their defensive positions, following protocols designed for dealing with reasonable enemies who might be deterred by superior numbers. They're fighting the wrong war, Maya said. Your people are trained to de-escalate conflicts with rational actors. But pirates aren't rational. They're predators who understand only strength and weakness. What would you do differently? Asked Commander Zethok. Maya stepped up to the tactical display and began manipulating the holographic controls. Stop trying to shield the civilians and start hunting the pirates. Use the civilian ships as bait while positioning attack craft for ambush strikes. Make the pirates choose between easy prey and their own survival. She highlighted several pirate vessels on the display. These 3 ships are their heavy hitters, but they're operating independently. Take out their command vessel first, then exploit the coordination breakdown to eliminate the others. Miss Chen, Professor Veltar said carefully, you're describing combat tactics, not rescue operations. Sometimes they're the same thing, Maya replied. Those civilians are going to die unless someone is willing to fight for them. Not negotiate, not de-escalate, but actually fight. She turned to face the assembled faculty. I know what I'm asking. I know this goes against everything your civilizations stand for. But sometimes the only way to protect innocence is to be willing to sacrifice your own. Commander Zethok studied the tactical display for a long moment. What would you need? A fast ship and authorization to coordinate with the rescue fleet, Maya said immediately. And one thing your people might not understand, permission to fail. Real combat isn't like simulations. Good people die even when you do everything right. Maya, Kethavar said, his skin flickering with concern. You don't have to do this. No one expects a student to. Yes, they do, Maya interrupted gently. They just don't realize it yet. This is what humans adapted for. This is why we developed the ability to function while afraid, to make decisions under pressure, to fight even when we're not sure we can win. She looked around the command center one more time. Those people out there need someone who understands predators, someone who's been prey and learned to fight back. That's not just human training. That's human trauma turned into strength. Professor Veltar's skin shifted through several colors before settling on determined purple. Commander Zethok, prepare Miss Chen a fast courier ship. Full academy authorization. Professor, Commander Zethok said carefully, if this goes wrong, 43 academy graduates and hundreds of civilians die anyway. Professor Veltar replied, Miss Chen has shown us something important about human adaptation. Perhaps it's time we learned what humans can do when their backs are against the wall. Maya felt a familiar calm settle over her as she prepared for combat. This was what 8 years of armor and training had prepared her for. Not just surviving trauma, but using that survival to protect others. As she headed for the docking bay, Maya realized that for the first time since arriving at the academy, she wasn't the strange human girl in armor. She was exactly what the situation required. A predator trained to hunt other predators. The galaxy was about to learn what human adaptation really meant. Maya's courier ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the battle zone. Through the cockpit viewport, she could see the chaos unfolding across several thousand kilometers of space. Civilian ships drifted helplessly, their engines disabled. Academy rescue vessels maintained defensive formations around them, their crews following textbook protocols that were completely wrong for this situation. And moving between them like sharks through a school of fish, the pirate vessels continued their methodical hunt. Academy control to courier ship persistence, came a voice through the communication system. This is Captain Mordan of the rescue vessel Harmony. We've been expecting you. Maya activated her response channel, persistence acknowledging. Captain, I need a tactical update. The pirates have disabled 7 civilian vessels and captured approximately 200 hostages, Captain Morden replied. His voice carried the strain of someone trained for peaceful missions, suddenly faced with violence. We've attempted to establish communications, but they're not responding to any diplomatic overtures. Because they're not diplomats, Maya said. They're predators. What's your current defensive posture? We're maintaining protective formations around the remaining civilian ships while attempting to— Captain, Maya interrupted. With respect, you're fighting the wrong battle. Every minute you spend in defensive positions gives them more time to capture hostages and strengthen their position. There was a pause. Maya could hear other voices in the background, the Academy crew discussing her words. Finally, Captain Morden replied, Miss Chen, our primary directive is to minimize casualties and protect civilian lives. And that's exactly what we're going to do, Maya said. But not by playing defense. Maya brought up her tactical display and began analyzing the pirate formations. 5 ships total, 3 light raiders for speed and harassment, 1 heavy cruiser for firepower, and 1 command vessel that was hanging back, coordinating the attack. She activated the fleet communication channel. All Academy vessels, this is Persistence. I'm transmitting new tactical coordinates. We're going to end this in the next 10 minutes. Miss Chen, came another voice. This one from Commander Telek of the vessel Serenity. We appreciate your input, but our crews aren't trained for offensive operations. Maya looked at her sensor readings. The pirates had just disabled another civilian ship. More hostages, more innocents depending on people who were trained to talk, not fight. Commander, what's your crew complement? 15 beings, all with advanced degrees in conflict resolution and humanitarian aid. Perfect, Maya said. And your ship's weapon systems? Standard defensive arrays. Pulse cannons, shield projectors, electronic countermeasures. That's more firepower than the entire pirate fleet combined, Maya pointed out. You don't need combat training. You just need someone to tell you where to point it. Maya began transmitting tactical data to all the rescue vessels. I'm sending you targeting solutions for each pirate ship. The key is coordination and commitment. No half measures, no warning shots. When I give the signal, you hit them with everything you have. Miss Chen, Captain Morden said carefully, that seems rather aggressive for a humanitarian mission. Maya watched as another civilian ship's distress beacon went silent. She thought about the hostages aboard those vessels, probably huddled in cargo holds or passenger compartments, wondering if anyone was coming to save them. Captain, 8 years ago I was trapped in a room with 40 other children while armed terrorists decided whether we lived or died. Do you know what I learned during those 14 hours? What did you learn, Miss Chen? That there are 2 kinds of people in the universe, predators and prey, and the only thing predators understand is superior force applied without hesitation. Maya began maneuvering her courier ship toward the pirate command vessel. The good news is that these pirates chose the wrong prey. They're expecting you to follow standard diplomatic protocols. They're counting on you being too civilized to fight back effectively. And if we're wrong, asked Commander Telek, if they execute hostages in response to aggressive action, they're going to execute hostages anyway, Maya said bluntly. That's what predators do. The only question is whether they do it from a position of strength or while their ships are exploding around them. Maya's sensors detected weapons lock from the pirate command vessel. They had noticed her approach and were taking defensive measures. Good. That meant they were paying attention to her instead of the hostage situation. All Academy vessels, prepare for attack run on my mark, Maya announced. Target priorities are command vessel first, then heavy cruiser, then raiders. Ignore the disabled civilian ships until we've eliminated the active threats. Miss Chen, Captain Morden said, our crews are terrified. They've never been in actual combat. Fear is good, Maya replied. Fear keeps you alive. Your crews don't need to be brave. They just need to be accurate. Maya's courier ship suddenly lurched as the pirate command vessel opened fire. Pulse cannon blasts lit up the space around her ship, but her smaller, more maneuverable craft easily avoided the attacks. She had trained for this scenario hundreds of times in simulators. The difference was that this time, failure meant real death instead of a reset button. Now, Maya said simply, the Academy Rescue Fleet opened fire in perfect coordination. 15 ships, each carrying enough firepower to level a small city. unleashed concentrated fire on the pirate vessels. The command ship, caught off guard by the sudden aggressive response, tried to evade but was caught in a crossfire from 3 different angles. The ship came apart in a brilliant explosion. Command vessel eliminated, Maya announced calmly. All vessels target the heavy cruiser. Maintain focus fire. The pirate heavy cruiser, suddenly without coordination from their command ship, tried to retreat while simultaneously returning fire. But the Academy vessels had superior numbers and positioning. Within 30 seconds, the heavy cruiser was debris. 2 raiders are breaking off, reported Captain Mordan. They're heading for the disabled civilian ships. Negative, Maya said. Serenity and Harmony intercept and destroy. Don't let them reach the hostages. Maya watched on her tactical display as the 2 Academy vessels moved to intercept the fleeing raiders. The pirate ships were faster, but they had to change course to avoid the Academy fire, which slowed their escape enough for the rescue vessels to catch up. Both raiders were destroyed within minutes. All hostile vessels eliminated, Maya announced, beginning rescue operations immediately. As the Academy crews began boarding the disabled civilian ships, Maya finally allowed herself to breathe. Her hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline, but she felt calm. This was what she had trained for. This was what her trauma had prepared her to do. Persistence, this is Captain Mordan, came a voice through the comm. We've secured all civilian vessels. Total casualties, 0. All hostages recovered safely. Maya closed her eyes for a moment. 0 casualties. In her nightmares about the school attack, she always imagined scenarios where everyone could be saved. Today that nightmare had become reality. Outstanding work, Captain, Maya replied. Your crews performed perfectly. Miss Chen, Captain Mordan said, his voice different now. I owe you an apology. When Command told us a human student would be coordinating our response, I thought it was a mistake. What do you think now? There was a pause. I think we just learned something important about human capabilities, and about what it means to protect innocent lives. As the rescue fleet formed up for the return journey to the Academy, Maya received a priority communication from Professor Veltar. Miss Chen, the entire Academy watched your operation through our tactical displays, the professor said. The faculty would like to debrief you upon your return. Of course, Professor. There's something else. The Galactic Council has been monitoring this situation. They're requesting a full report on human combat capabilities and tactical doctrine. Maya smiled grimly. Tell them that humans don't have superior combat capabilities, Professor. We just have superior motivation. When you've been prey, you never forget what it feels like, and you never let it happen to anyone else if you can help it. As her courier ship jumped back into hyperspace, Maya realized that something fundamental had changed, not just in how her classmates would see her, but in how she saw herself. For 8 years she had worn armor to protect herself from a dangerous world. Today she had become the armor that protected others. The galaxy was about to learn that humans weren't just adapted to survive trauma. They were adapted to prevent it from happening to anyone else. Maya returned to find the Academy transformed. Word of the rescue operation had spread through every level of the station, and for the first time since her arrival, students weren't staring at her armor with confusion or amusement. They were staring with something approaching awe. She walked through the corridors toward the faculty debriefing, still wearing her combat armor from the mission. But now the weight felt different, less like protection from the world and more like a symbol of what she could do in it. Maya, a voice called out behind her. She turned to see Zarakan, the Alari student from her xenobiology class, approaching with several other students. Is it true you coordinated the entire rescue operation? I helped, Maya said simply. Helped? This came from Thresh, the Grimani student. The tactical recordings show you eliminated 5 pirate vessels in under 10 minutes with 0 casualties. That's not helping. That's something else entirely. Maya looked at the group of students surrounding her. A week ago, these same beings had whispered about her behind her back, making jokes about human primitives and death world paranoia. Now they looked at her with expressions she had never seen before. Respect, curiosity, and something that might have been admiration. How did you know what to do? Asked a Vorthon student whose name Maya didn't remember. Our military academies teach defensive strategies and diplomatic solutions. But you fought like you'd done it before. Maya was quiet for a moment. I had done it before. Not in space, but the principles are the same. When someone threatens innocent people, You stop them by whatever means necessary. But you're 17, Zarakin pointed out. When could you have learned tactical combat? Maya thought about the question. These students had grown up in peaceful societies where violence was theoretical, where conflicts were resolved through careful negotiation and mutual understanding. They couldn't imagine a world where children learned to fight because the alternative was death. I learned when I was 9, Maya said finally, when armed terrorists took my school hostage, and I realized that sometimes there's no one coming to save you. Sometimes you have to save yourself. The group fell silent. Maya could see them trying to process the idea of a child facing life or death situations, of being forced to develop survival skills that other species learned only in academic settings. That's why you wear the armor, Thresh said suddenly. Not because you're afraid of us, but because you learned that the world can be dangerous. The armor helps me feel safe enough to function, Maya confirmed. It's a coping mechanism that lets me interact with others without being paralyzed by hypervigilance. Kethavar approached from down the corridor, his crystal skin flickering with excitement. Maya, the faculty wants to see you immediately, but first you need to know what's happening. What do you mean? The Galactic Council emergency session convened an hour ago, Kethavar explained. They're discussing revisions to military doctrine based on your tactical demonstration. Apparently every major naval academy in the galaxy is requesting copies of the battle recordings. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Why? Because in 300 years of galactic civilization, no one has ever achieved a perfect rescue with 0 casualties, Zarakin said. Military historians are calling it impossible. It's not impossible, Maya said. It's just that most species fight to minimize damage instead of fighting to win. When you're trying to protect innocent lives, those are 2 completely different strategies. She thought about the pirates they had destroyed and felt no remorse. They had chosen to be predators. They had threatened innocent people. The galaxy was safer without them. Maya, Kethavar said carefully, there's something else. The Council is forming a new military advisory position, someone to consult on situations involving hostile non-state actors. They want to offer it to you. Maya stopped walking. They want to offer a military position to a 17-year-old student? They want to offer it to the being who just demonstrated capabilities that no one else in the galaxy possesses, Thresh corrected. Age is irrelevant when you're the only person who knows how to fight predators. Maya continued toward the faculty meeting, her mind reeling. A week ago, she had been the weird human girl who wore armor to class. Now the galactic government wanted her military advice. The transformation felt surreal. The faculty debriefing room was packed. Professor Veltar stood at the center, her skin a shifting pattern of colors that Maya had learned indicated intense concentration. Commander Zethok was there, along with several other faculty members Maya didn't recognize. And seated at the far end of the table was a figure that made Maya's breath catch. Admiral Kessitar of the Galactic Defense Fleet. Miss Chen, Admiral Kessitar said as Maya entered. Please take a seat. We have much to discuss. Maya sat carefully, her armor clanking against the chair. Every eye in the room was focused on her, but for the first time the attention didn't feel judgmental. It felt respectful. The tactical recordings of your operation have been analyzed by our best military minds, Admiral Kessitar continued. Your combat doctrine represents a fundamental shift in strategic thinking. We'd like to understand how you developed these capabilities. Maya looked around the room. Admiral, what's the standard Galactic Fleet response to a hostage situation? Establish communication with the hostile actors. Attempt negotiation. If that fails, implement containment protocols while requesting specialized diplomatic intervention. And how often does that result in 0 casualties? Admiral Kessitar's expression grew uncomfortable. Hostage situations typically result in some loss of life, yes. We consider a 20% casualty rate to be acceptable in rescue operations. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. Admiral, with respect, that's not acceptable. That's failure. When innocent people are threatened, the only acceptable casualty rate is 0. But Miss Chen, Professor Veltar interjected, surely some losses are inevitable in violent situations, only if you're not willing to do what's necessary to prevent them, Maya replied. Those pirates weren't going to negotiate. They weren't going to release hostages in exchange for concessions. They were predators who understood only superior force. Maya stood and walked to the room's holographic display. The problem with galactic military doctrine is that it's designed by species who evolved beyond violence. You assume that every conflict can be resolved through reason and compromise. But predators aren't reasonable. They're opportunistic. They count on their prey being too civilized to fight back effectively. She activated the display, showing the tactical recording of the rescue operation. Human military doctrine is different because humans learned that sometimes you can't negotiate with evil. Sometimes you have to destroy it before it destroys you. Admiral Kestar leaned forward. Are you saying that humans are naturally more aggressive than other species? I'm saying that humans learn to be aggressive when necessary, because we've been prey, Maya corrected. Every human child learns about predators, not just animal predators, but human ones. We learn that evil exists, that it specifically targets the innocent, and that sometimes the only way to stop it is through superior violence. Maya thought about her presentation from the week before, about human adaptation and psychological resilience. Other species see our military training and think we're violent. But we're not. We're protective. There's a difference. Explain, Admiral Kessitar said. Violence is aggression for its own sake. Protection is aggression in service of preserving innocence, Maya said. When humans fight, we're not fighting because we enjoy it. We're fighting because someone has to. And we learned long ago that waiting for someone else to do it usually means innocent people die. She looked around the room at the assembled faculty. That's why I wear armor. Not because I want to fight, but because I learned that sometimes you don't get a choice. And when that moment comes, I want to be ready to protect others the way someone should have protected me. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Kestar spoke. Miss Chen, the Galactic Council would like to formally request your assistance in developing new tactical doctrines for dealing with hostile non-state actors. Would you be willing to serve as a military advisor? Maya was quiet for a moment, thinking about the implications. She was 17 years old, a first-year student at the most prestigious academy in the galaxy. But she was also someone who had learned to fight predators and win. Admiral, she said finally, I'll help on one condition. Name it. We don't just develop new tactics. We develop new training programs. Every being in the Galactic Defense Fleet needs to understand the difference between fighting other militaries and fighting predators. Because if today proved anything, it's that the galaxy isn't as safe as everyone thought. Admiral Kessitar smiled. Agreed. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Advisory Board, Miss Chen. As the meeting continued and plans were made for Maya's new role, she realized that something fundamental had changed, not just in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. She wasn't the damaged girl hiding behind armor anymore. She was the person who stood between predators and their prey. The galaxy had learned what human adaptation really meant. Now it was time to teach others how to survive in a universe that wasn't always safe. 6 months later, Maya stood in the Academy's main auditorium facing an audience of over 3,000 beings from across the galaxy. Military officers, diplomatic corps members, Academy cadets, and government officials had all come to attend the first public demonstration of the new Human Doctrine Training Program. Maya no longer wore her armor every day. The psychological weight that had pressed down on her for 8 years had gradually lifted as she found purpose in teaching others to protect the innocent. But today, for this demonstration, she wore her full combat gear as a symbol of what she represented: humanity's transformation of trauma into strength. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium's sound system. 6 months ago, most of you believed that humans were violent primitives who had stumbled into galactic civilization by accident. Today, I'm going to show you what we really are. On the massive holographic display behind her, images appeared showing human rescue operations from across the galaxy. In 6 months, human tactical advisors had coordinated 47 successful hostage rescues, eliminated 12 pirate fleets, and stopped 3 attempted genocides. The casualty rate among innocents, 0. We are not a violent species, Maya continued. We are a protective species. There is a crucial difference that the galaxy is only now beginning to understand. Maya gestured to the display, which now showed before and after statistics. Before human tactical doctrine was implemented, the average galactic rescue operation resulted in a 23% casualty rate among civilians. Hostage situations had a 47% fatality rate. Pirates operated with virtual impunity because they knew that galactic forces would prioritize negotiation over action. The statistics shifted. In the 6 months since implementing human tactical principles, civilian casualties in rescue operations have dropped to 0.3%. Hostage fatalities are down to 0%. Piracy incidents have decreased by 74% galaxy-wide. A murmur went through the audience. Maya could see recognition dawning on hundreds of faces as they realized the implications of what she was showing them. The difference, Maya said, is not that humans are better fighters. The difference is that humans understand predators. We understand them because we've been their prey. Maya activated a new section of the display, showing the psychological profiles that had become the foundation of the new training program. Most galactic species evolved in environments where cooperation was the primary survival strategy. You learn to resolve conflicts through communication and compromise because that's what worked in your evolutionary environment. She paused, looking out at the audience. Humans evolved differently. We evolved in an environment where some conflicts couldn't be resolved through negotiation, where some individuals were irredeemably committed to harming others. We learned to identify predators and respond to them appropriately. In the front row, Admiral Kessitar nodded approvingly. Next to him sat representatives from dozens of different species, all of them now implementing human-trained tactical advisors in their military structures. This is what human children learn, Maya said, calling up new images on the display. We learn that there are beings in the universe who will hurt innocent people simply because they can. We learn that these beings cannot be reasoned with, cannot be negotiated with, and cannot be reformed. They can only be stopped. The images showed human children in self-defense classes, learning to recognize dangerous situations and respond appropriately. To most of the alien audience, it looked like militarization of childhood. Maya knew they were finally beginning to understand it as preparation for an unsafe universe. When I first arrived at this academy, Maya said, many of you laughed at my armor. You saw it as evidence of human paranoia and primitive thinking. What you didn't understand is that my armor represented something precious, the transformation of victimhood into strength. Maya touched a control on her armor, and sections of it became transparent, revealing the scars underneath. Even after all these months, the sight still drew gasps from audiences seeing it for the first time. These scars are from when I was 9 years old, and someone who was supposed to protect me decided to hurt me instead. Maya said calmly, for 8 years I wore armor because I learned that the universe contained predators, and I was determined never to be helpless again. She looked out at the audience, seeing the mix of sympathy and understanding in their faces. But what I've learned over the past 6 months is that my armor was never really about protecting myself. It was about preparing to protect others. Every human who has survived trauma carries the same responsibility, to ensure that no one else experiences what they experienced. Maya gestured to the statistics on the display. This is what human adaptation really means. We don't just survive trauma. We transform it into the motivation to prevent trauma from happening to others. Every human tactical advisor, every human soldier, every human who stands between predators and their prey is carrying that same mission. Never again. She activated one final section of the display, showing the current deployment of human tactical advisors across the galaxy. Today, there are human advisors working with the defense forces of 47 different species. They're not there as conquerors or colonizers. They're there as guardians, sharing the hardest lesson our species ever learned. Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be prepared for war. Maya looked directly at Admiral Kessitar. Admiral, you asked me 6 months ago how humans developed these capabilities. The answer is simple. We developed them because we had to. Because someone had to learn how to fight monsters, and we were the species that encountered them first. Admiral Kessitar stood. Miss Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Defense Force and the Galactic Council, I want to thank you for teaching us something vital about survival in an imperfect universe. Your species has given us something we didn't know we needed, the ability to protect innocence without compromising our own principles. The audience erupted in applause, but Maya barely heard it. She was thinking about the 9-year-old girl she had been, trapped and terrified in a school classroom while predators decided her fate. That little girl could never have imagined that her trauma would one day become the foundation for protecting others across the entire galaxy. After the demonstration, Maya returned to her quarters to find a message waiting for her. The holographic image of Dr. Martinez appeared, smiling with pride. "Maya," Dr. Martinez said, "I wanted you to know that I watched your presentation today. 8 years ago, when you were lying in that hospital bed, I never could have imagined that your survival would lead to this." Maya smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Dr. Martinez, I think I finally understand what you meant when you said that surviving trauma isn't just about healing. It's about transforming pain into purpose." "And what's your purpose now?" Maya looked out the window of her quarters at the vast space station around her, filled with beings from across the galaxy who were learning to protect instead of just negotiate, to fight when necessary instead of hoping for the best. "To make sure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else," Maya said. "To teach the galaxy that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is be willing to fight for those who can't fight for themselves." She thought about her armor, no longer a barrier between herself and the world, but a symbol of transformation. She thought about the children across the galaxy, who would grow up safer because someone had learned to fight the monsters. "The galaxy laughed when I came to school in armor," Maya said, "but they stopped laughing when they learned what the scars meant. They learned that humans don't just survive. We overcome, and then we make sure others don't have to go through what we went through." As the call ended, Maya looked at her reflection in the darkened window. For the first time in 8 years, she saw not a victim, but a guardian. The armor had never been about hiding her scars. It had been about preparing to earn them in service of others. The galaxy had learned what human adaptation meant. Now it was time to teach them what human purpose looked like. A universe where predators learned to fear their prey, and innocence was protected by those who had lost their own and refused to let it happen again. Maya smiled and began planning the next training session. There was work to do.